And we are headed live.
Good evening, everyone. Today is April 26, 2021. This is the regular meeting of the Indianapolis Public Library Board. I want to welcome everyone. And first order of business, we do have all the board members that are able to make it tonight, so we're going to go forward. Let's go ahead and call the roll. Angie, if you don't mind.
Yes. Mr. Bigsby.
Present.
Dr. Murtada.
Present.
Ms. Payne.
Present.
Reverend Robinson.
Present.
And Judge Salinas.
Okay, I'll stay with the theme, present.
Thank you.
All right. Before we move on to the first item, I do want to express for myself my gratitude to all our staff all over the county. We're starting to come back to life in a lot of areas, and with that, you know, things are happening in our library branches. So to our staff, on behalf of myself, I thank you for everything you guys are doing and for everything that comes into play on a day in and day out basis. So thank you again. I just know you guys are doing an amazing job, and especially if drama comes up, because you never know when it will, when it won't. Thank you for everything you guys are doing on behalf of myself. And I won't speak on behalf of the board, but I'm pretty sure the sentiment is across the board.
Absolutely.
All right, we do have a quorum. And so we're going to go on to item number 3 on our agenda is public comments. In lieu of the extreme emergency facing our city, and in keeping with executive order issued by the governor, the public will not be invited to physically attend this meeting, but has the ability to view and listen to the regular meeting via live stream on on a YouTube link, or public comments that can be made in person at the Library Services Center or submitted in writing in advance. And then there's the link there. Angie, is there any patrons that would like to speak this evening or read or make a comment?
I do have one comment that was submitted by a patron, Mr. James Weinman. He says, when the library has an online event, like the book discussions, it would be nice to have it recorded and available for access for maybe a week after the event. That way someone who was not able to participate live or tried to register after registration was closed could still benefit from the event. That was
actually not bad.
Not bad.
I think enough said for our people to maybe look on that. I mean, technology is changing. It can't be that hard to do, I would imagine. So I'll let Jackie get to work on that one. All right, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes of the executive, regular, and special meeting. The regular meeting was held on March 22nd of 2021. Is there a motion from the board to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held March 22nd of this year?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, is there a call or roll, Angie?
Yes. Mr. Bigsby.
I'll be abstaining since I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. Dr. Murtada.
Approve.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Payne.
Approve.
Reverend Robinson.
Approve.
And Judge Salinas.
Approve. We still have a quorum with 4, so
Yes.
the motion carries.
Yes.
We'll move on to the Finance Committee. Dr. Payne.
EJ, are you there? There she is.
I am
EJ.
here. I
Good.
apologize. I came up so quickly. Today, we only have our treasurer's report. And though there's nothing unusual, I just want to go over our summary page for our operating fund quickly. So I will share my screen. Okay, so as you can see, we received revenues of $1.3 million in the operating fund year to date through the end of March. We haven't received any property taxes yet, which is usual. We will receive our first we already did, but it's not in here. We received our first property advance in April. And so that will show up on our next report. So on the revenue side, as compared to year-to-date 2020, we're running about the same percentage-wise in terms of our budget or projections. But our revenues are actually slightly down. Two reasons for that. Interest income. So by this time last year, the pandemic had just hit. And so we still had higher interest rates. And so we had significantly more interest income. And then also we have a lot less fines this year than this time last year. So that's a big difference between this year and last year. On the expenditure side, we're running a little bit less in terms of a percentage of the budget. So this year so far, we've used up 18% of the budget. Last year, we had used up about 20%. I think this is primarily due to timing. I still think that we will catch up on some of those expenditures. For instance, our ebooks were not at the same rate of ordering year to date as we were this time last year. And I believe that's just a matter of paying for things that we might have already ordered. So the one thing though that I think is lower is our repairs and maintenance is lower than last year.
That's good.
So far this year, yeah. So that's really all I have for the treasurer's report. I will take any questions that anyone had or has.
Well, we're Judge.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to congratulate EJ and the library for the award you got
You
for the
tell.
budget.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we received our very first, I'm not sure I told you guys this already. Did I, Jackie? We received our very first GFOA Distinguished Budget Award for the library for the 2020 budget year. So that was very exciting.
Hey, heck yeah, toot your horn if you need to.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you to our finance staff. We couldn't have done it without Jenny in particular, Jenny Carter. So I want to
Congratulations.
say
Congratulations.
to her.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Payne. That's amazing. It should be recognized across the board. We're very fortunate to have the team that we do
Right.
in all the departments. But thank you, EJ. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Do we need any motion, or do we need to approve anything, EJ, with the report?
Yes, I would like to ask that you approve the treasurer's report for audit.
So moved.
Is there a
Oh,
second?
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. All right. Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Bigsby
Approved.
and Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved. Motion
Thank you.
carries.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Dr. Payne, I think that's all we have, right, ma'am?
Yes.
All right. We move on to number 6, diversity, policy, and human resources. Mr. Bixby, Curtis?
Yeah, Catherine, are you there?
Yes, I am.
There
Thank
she
you.
is.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You have in your board packet several different documents for this evening's presentation. But before we get started, I'd like to offer a sincere thank you to both Dr. Michael Twyman and to Garrett Mason, both of whom helped with the preparation of this report. And so I wanted to acknowledge their participation and input into this. You have several documents that are attached. The first one is the charts that we will be reviewing. They are accompanied by an explanation or a narrative for each of those charts, and that I'll be going over with you. There's some reference materials so that as you read the charts, hopefully you took a look at this before tonight. And there was a listing because in some of the charts, there is a reference to the EEO job categories. And so our library jobs are listed out in each of those categories for you to see. There's also a document called account reference. It is by EEO category and gender, and it is for all employees, and then one for promotions, one for separations, one for applicants, and one for new hires. So if you want to pull up and take a look at your charts, first of all, we're pleased to provide to you the 2020 annual diversity report.
Ms. Legg,
Yes,
if you're not going to share the screen, can you tell us which page on the package it is, please?
I'm sorry, I don't have that. Is Angie, could you help us out, please?
No, I can't see that right now, Catherine.
It's on page 47. I can share it if you'd like.
That would be great. If you could share the charts, please, Joe.
Just so we can follow along appropriately.
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. So prior to getting into these charts, this is more detailed and comprehensive information about our progress on our diversity goals. We've redesigned the format of this report and added some summary narratives, which I'll be going over with you. It's our hope that this new format and charts provides you an in-depth picture of how our organization is faring on a couple of different fronts. These include the racial and gender composition of our staff, job category distribution, our applicant pool, our new hires, promotions, and separations. We are experiencing some moderate movement in a couple of areas, but clearly we see that we have much more work to be done in order to attain greater levels of racial and gender diversity at IndyPL. This first chart, called Racial Distribution of IndyPL Staff, is showing a look back on a couple of different years. We can't compare numbers from year to year because this year is a restarting point. Prior years, we did a point in time for our employee count, and that was for all active employees. Starting this year, and this was the result of a discussion with our strategic planning and assessment officer, Garrett, who is a data expert, we thought it would be more beneficial to talk about all employees throughout an entire year. So it's a cumulative number. And that way, from years tonight or this past year, excuse me, going forward, we will have a better picture of the data rather than on a single date in time, okay? The next chart, titled Gender Distribution of All IndyPL Staff. This is slowly showing an increase in our male staff. We are piloting a new recruitment package with LinkedIn to identify and attract more staff from underrepresented groups that we will utilize targeted contacting of both applicants, both active and passive job seekers. And it will also allow job seekers a one-click access on LinkedIn to an IndyPL career page, which highlights our organization and it makes it very easy for them. So if they have an interest, they can then click from that page directly to apply to our jobs. And so we're hoping that this will be a better recruitment method because we are looking for more specific groups to target. And nowadays people use technology to search for jobs. And so we want to take advantage of that. The next chart is the titled Job Categories by Race. Go down. Employers who have at least 100 employees and federal contractors who have at least 50 employees are required to submit an annual EEO-1 report. It's a government form that requests information about employees' job categories, ethnicity, race, and gender. And so we send that in every year. Several charts on this report, this diversity report, show this information in a couple of different ways. And this chart titled Job Categories by Race shows the percent of each employee demographic for every EEO category. And so, excuse me. The attachment that I mentioned earlier that is part of the reference materials, job categories by race, shows the percent, the attachment shows the count numbers in each job category's demographic breakdown, so it's even into more detail. The next chart, race by job category, is exactly the same information, just broken down into the racial breakdown within each EEO category. That information is also available on that same reference material that I just spoke about. The next chart is titled Applicant Racial Breakdown by Year. And this is showing the percent of applicant demographics each year. And to help understand what this means, in 2020, we had 54 jobs filled and we had 4,130 applicants. This is down considerably based on obviously the pandemic, and we did not have a lot of jobs open. So for different years, 2019, we had 7,000 applicants for 125 positions. In 2018, we had 6,092 applicants for 160 positions. In 2017, we had a little over 3,500 applicants for 95 positions. So it really varies year by year based on the number of positions that we have open and that we are filling. In 2020, 19% of new hires identified as Black African American. However, the percentage could be as high as 34%, with those having identified as 2 or more races or choosing not to respond. The next chart is the applicant gender breakdown by year. Okay. There's a modest increase in the Hispanic, Latino applicants and new hires. We again don't know if this percent would be larger with those having chosen not to self-identify. Our challenge is to better position ourselves as an attractive employer through social media and targeted recruitment. So the percent of Hispanic Latino new hires from 2016 to 2020 rose from 1% to 11%. So we have a growth in the area, but we need to do more and be better at it. The next chart is applicants by EEOC, which is the job categories, race and gender. And this is the intersectional breakdown of the applicants. Okay, and then the next chart is, excuse me, sorry, there was an interruption. The next chart is the applicants by race and racial breakdown of new hires. I wanted you to see the difference between the total number of the percent of applicants and the percent of new hires. These two charts show that relationship of applicants to hires for those who self-identified. A greater percent of Asian, 2 or more races, Hispanic, Latino were hired compared to the percent of applicants, which I think is a very good thing. The percent of Black African American applicants to hire was almost equal, and the percent of white hires was significantly less than the percent of applicants. So I believe we are headed in the right direction. The next chart is the percent of all promotions by race. In 2020, there were 28 employees who were promoted, and a promotion is defined as moving from one pay grade to a higher pay grade. We struggle at the library to balance internal promotion opportunities for staff or development and growth with the external hiring, which creates more opportunity for increasing our staff diversity of underrepresented groups. The promotions are broken down into more detail in the reference document titled 2020 Counts of Promotions by EEO, Race, and Gender, which is one of your reference materials.
Excuse me, Catherine.
Sure.
Did you want us to wait and ask questions afterwards, Judge Salinas?
I think I'm okay either way. If you want to ask one, go ahead, Dr. Matala.
Just a quick one. You said we struggle to balance internal promotion opportunities for staff with external hiring, which creates more opportunity for increasing our staff diversity of underrepresented groups. Can you explain just what that means, please?
Sure. We have a lot of concern raised by our staff that there's not opportunity for growth within the library. And when we have looked at promotions have pretty well reflected our current percent of demographic. So the way to increase employees, total numbers of employees in underrepresented groups is by hiring externally, okay, by bringing in new folks. And at the same time, by doing that, that again limits opportunities for internal promotions because you're competing against a greater number of individuals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. At the same time, I'm wondering about how do we assure that those folks who are internal are individuals who are valued and seen as having the opportunity for promotion.
And that's where we have a challenge because we want to be able to balance that to offer opportunity for our internal staff and to also increase our applicant pool, which increases our opportunities for hiring and increasing our underrepresented staff members. So
how is that done for white staff members?
Pardon me?
How is it done for white staff members?
Well, it's by offering positions externally that if we can continue to increase our applicant pool from underrepresented groups, then we have a greater opportunity to fill those open positions with individuals representing those groups versus having an only posting internally where the greater percentage of applicants will likely be white versus others. So it's creating a larger applicant pool from which to hopefully draw individuals that will then become viable job candidates.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, did I answer?
Yeah, it does present a real dilemma, and I hope we have some additional conversations about it.
Sure, it's a dilemma because as an internal staff member, you know, they want to be able to have opportunity. And what our biggest challenge is that we're not a company that we can make more widgets, and so we need more people in order to do that. We're quite limited in our revenue and our positions, so we don't grow a lot of new positions. So we do a lot of backfilling. So it is not a greater and an increasing number of jobs that are available for both internal staff to go after. So that is a dilemma, you're right. And we're trying to meet that challenge in a fair way to offer opportunity for both internal and opportunity to hire externally.
I hope we can have further discussion about it. I'm concerned for those who have been a part of the library for a number of years and they're being able to be promoted and have that opportunity, just as we want to promote the opportunity of equity, the equity of opportunity. So I'd like to have further discussion, not right now because of time constraints, but we must put that back on the agenda for further discussion.
Sure, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you privately at the same time. Okay, are we ready? The next chart is racial distribution of promotions by job category. And each demographic is broken down into the EEO job categories by percent promoted. Additional detail is on the count reference attachment that I provided to you. The next chart shows the promotion job category distribution by race. And that is it breaks down by EEO job category, the percent of each demographic in that particular category of promotions. And that detail again is on the count reference sheet. The next chart shows you the promotions by EEOC, race, and gender. This is the intersectional analysis This year, 14% of promotions were males and 85% females. In comparison to our total staff gender breakdown, 24% are male and 76 are female. The next chart is separate.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can we go back to the promotional job category distribution by race? Those two categories that are 100% one demographic, is there a reason for that, or just
Yes, because it might have been just one individual
okay, just
that was promoted. Yes.
okay, fair enough. All right, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. So if we go back to the next chart would be separations by race. The majority of separations this past year, 23% or 27 employees were for the reason of career opportunities. And the challenge for HR is to do a better job of understanding where the staff who are leaving the library for career opportunities are going. We do know that many are young people who are going into school or graduating from school and then are moving on into their own careers. But knowing this, we can determine whether and if we can be more proactive in retaining staff and reducing turnover costs, especially for benefits eligible staff positions. An additional avenue that we plan to pursue are called stay interviews, and we want to talk to individuals, especially staff from underrepresented groups, as to why they stay, and then we can use that information to help educate staff about opportunities and reasons why it's a good thing to stay with the library. So we will be looking at that, and I will be able to bring information to you at a later date. The next chart is the racial breakdown of separation reason. And in 2020, there were 116 separations. Of this number, 6 were Asian, 20 were Black African Americans, 5 were Hispanic Latino, 2 were not specified, 2 were 2 or more races, and 81 whites. The additional detail of this is on the attached count reference sheet. The next chart is separations by EEOC race and gender. And again, this looks at an intersectional look at the separations based on the EEO categories, the various categories. So on the question that we're asking about, are we making progress? That was the last chart. I'm sorry, Joe. Thank you. It's difficult to answer. We do know that the number of white employees is steadily decreasing. However, our open positions are primarily backfills, as I mentioned earlier, and we're not growing new positions. Difficulty balancing internal hires to give current staff growth opportunity against hiring externally limits the applicant pool. Internal promotions, as I mentioned earlier, are closely aligned with current staff racial percentages. Again, this report is a new starting point, and it counts the total number of employees employed by the library throughout the entire year of 2020. Previous reports were that point in time, which was done on December 31st. But I looked back on the previous years, and I looked at December 31st in 2020 to kind of compare to previous years. And what I found was from December 31st of 2016 to the same date, compared to the same date in 2020, okay? American Indian Alaskan Natives had a 0.2% increase. The Asian demographic had a 1.3% increase. The Black African American increased by 1%. There was no change in the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander demographic. The Hispanic Latino increased by 1.6%, and white demographic decreased by 5.8%. So from those 2 days, and also we have to understand that each year, the total number of employees that we looked at did differ. We don't stay the same when it comes to total number of employees. So that also impacts some numbers, okay? So for instance, on December 31st, 2016, we had a total of 617 employees. And on December 31st of 2020, we had 581 employees. So that is We're also hoping, I'm sorry, there's two more, pardon me. 2 or more races demographic increased by 0.5% and not specified increased by 1.5%. So we're hoping that our pilot program with LinkedIn is going to enhance our reach to a broader group of applicants. The library needs and seeks technically savvy individuals to fill our positions to best serve our communities. We've talked about that with you, and you have spoken about it in other board meetings. We believe our partnership with LinkedIn, along with implementing our other strategies, will be a more successful recruitment method and will attract a greater diversity of applicants, resulting in increasing the hires, retention, and ultimately promotions of underrepresented groups. So I thank you for listening. I know that was a lot of information. Questions, Pat?
Yes. Catherine, give me more information about LinkedIn and how we will be using that, please.
Sure. LinkedIn is a platform. It's a social media platform, but it's also become either the first or second top recruiting technology that's used nowadays. People can use it to get on LinkedIn. You can put your professional profile on there. You can also, it's also used as a social media platform. And as I mentioned earlier, Pat, people who are looking for jobs nowadays, traditional methods like job fairs or sending in a resume to an organization, that just doesn't work.
Right.
I will tell you that the best job fair that we attend is Andre Carson's Youth Opportunity Fair. That is where we find kids who are go-getters, and they are interested in at least spending some time working at the library while they're in school. So they get an exposure to the library. But those same kids, when they're looking for jobs for their careers, they're the ones out there on LinkedIn. They're the ones who go on Indeed.com, which is again, they're number 1 and 2, which is a platform for job finding. And what Indeed does is when we post a job, say on our website, okay, Indeed actually goes, and I can't tell you technically how they do it, but they go and search all kinds of job boards and websites, and they pull that information in. So it's like a one-stop shop for someone who's looking for a job. So rather than most job seekers who may check a very specialized professional site that's small, the likelihood is they've already either checked both Indeed and LinkedIn first. Those are the go-to places now for that. And the other thing about LinkedIn in this pilot program that we're trying is that if you're a job seeker and you're on LinkedIn, we can, based on keywords, so your professional profile, whatever you may say about yourself, we can target you and send a personalized email that says, hey, we're the Indianapolis Public Library. We see that you have an MLS, or we see that you have an accounting degree, or whatever it might be that we're looking for. Come check us out. And what also happens on LinkedIn is there's a career page, and we're working with Joe Bakke and his team there in communications, that as a job seeker, I can click on that with one click, and it takes me to our career page, which is a story about IndyPL. We can put on individuals who talk about their jobs or working at the library. We can talk about our culture. We can show all kinds of things. And then that then drives me to say, oh, I might like to apply here. And with one more click, I'm able to apply at IndyPL. So it is a very slick process.
So, Kathleen, am I to understand, are we changing our philosophy and being proactive in recruiting as opposed to letting other people apply when we have an opening? Because on LinkedIn, I know there are people that recruit out of there, look for people that are on that site that are job hunting. So when you say we're going to send it, we have the potential to send out emails to potential people, or if we have an opening. That's in my view being proactive. Are we going to do that for all positions, or what's your intent? Because
We can do that for all positions, but right now my intent is to focus on positions that we're looking for more a higher technical skill. So I'm not going to put a page on LinkedIn.
okay,
That we already have posted. It stays up all the time, and it's by location. So we want to use it to try and drive people and applicants to us. One of the other things that you can do with LinkedIn is you can go after passive job seekers who are just out there kind of, they're not really looking. But we can send to specific demographic groups that have self-identified, groups that, so for instance, they may have a group of Hispanic librarians or Hispanic accountants or different associative groups that we can then target with passive emails that say, hey, we exist and we're a great place and come take a look at us. And so you catch passive job seekers that way, along with active job seekers. So I'm really excited about it. I'm hoping that it's as good as we are expecting.
I'm very familiar with LinkedIn and Indeed both. The university uses a number of different ways, but I'm looking back at the separations by race data. And many stated in conversations with HR that the pandemic was a factor in their decision. Of 20 African-American separations, 15%, 3 employees were retirements. So that tells me little about what's really going on. It tells me very little in terms of being able to say, all right, now what will we do about the separations? And quite frankly, what I find with LinkedIn, often people will post, but they will contact, and this is with African Americans, Latinx, many times folks will contact someone. And if our culture has not really changed in order to support people of color, then folks will just say, yeah, that's what they say. But let me contact, for example, let's just say, I'm going to contact Judge Salinas, or I'm going to contact Pat Payne, because they're on the board. I know them. They're African-American, they're Latino. Let me find out from them. And I'm not talking about them as board members. Say they were employees at the library. Mm-hmm. Their perspectives will be more important than whatever we say on a document. And what I have found again and again is through the LinkedIn and through Indeed, we have great opportunities, but people like to check and find out what is the actual climate there? What is it like to work there? Do I really have an opportunity to be promoted? And if they check with different people within our organization on a personal level, have we actually created the kind of culture and climate where people feel, I want to stay? That's even much more about the idea of staying with the library. Well, that's why I said I hope we have a further conversation about it.
Yes, certainly we will. But I think, we have right now a very long tenured staff on average. So obviously there's something that's good that's happening at the library. Now, I can't tell you what an individual makes.
When you say long tenured staff for people of color?
Of many people, yes.
No, I was talking about, because we're talking about people of color, that's different.
Yes, and I know that we have, I can't give you a number right now, but we do have a number of people of color who are long tenured. And
we have 20 Black African-American separations. And that was just recent over this role of this data. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Hey, Catherine, what I think might help, I know I had requested one thing about the raw numbers. If we can get that out to the rest of the board, that might shed some additional light to where some of those graphs came from and all those different categories.
Yes, and there's on the reference materials, there is numbers on that, in that information. So I would direct you to take a look at that, but I'm also very happy to discuss that further with you.
I think Jackie had a comment as well.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to point out that those separations do include things like high school and college students who are working part-time and who leave us to go on to other careers when they finish school. So
That
I
is
think we would
correct.
spend time going deeper into the numbers to understand the difference between someone who was looking for a convenient job while they were in school versus someone who was looking to see whether or not we were a supportive career opportunity for them.
Well, it is ripe for further discussion, as was pointed out. So go ahead.
No,
Catherine.
I'm fine.
Was that your report?
It was. Thank you very much.
Does the board have any other questions? I think we skipped 6A. I apologize. Curtis, did you want to? You're muted. You're muted, Curtis.
Sorry about that, Judge. You said 6A?
Yeah, the presentation on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That was the one that.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm sorry. I
That's
might.
Jessica.
Jessica's
Correct.
report.
Yes.
So we didn't have anything on that, but if Jessica has something to add, that would be fine.
Oh,
I'm sorry. The agenda I have, hang on, just for clarification, the agenda that I have has 6A presentation on diversity and 6B briefing on the report. So
Yeah, I see that one as well.
Did we just have the briefing or the presentation? Just so we know.
You
We just had the
you just
briefing.
had the briefing.
All right. So now we get to the main course. All right, Jessica.
Good evening.
good evening.
Good evening.
Mhm.
I'm going to try to screen share here.
Is this
Can you
also
all-
in
I'm
our
sorry.
package or no?
Yes, you
Yes.
should have this in your packet already.
Yeah, it's in there.
It starts with supplier diversity under
Yes.
diversity, equity, inclusion,
Which
Q1.
page? Which
Q1
page?
updates.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you all for an opportunity to come before you this evening to give you a few updates on what we've been working on first quarter of 2021. At the end of 2020, one of the commitments that we made was to ensure that on a quarterly basis, we provided you an update on several items. And so I wanted to be sure to take some time this evening to kind of walk us through those. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And if there are any points of clarity that you need, I'm happy to address those also, whether today or in a follow-up. I will be mindful of our time also. I know we have a lot of people waiting to speak this evening. So to start us off, I thought it would be important because I know we've talked a lot about supplier diversity. I'm not going to rehash a lot of the elements that we've already talked about, but wanted to be sure to give you some updates on where we are so far. At the end of quarter four 2020, we had our very first Supplier Diversity Advisory Council. We created the Advisory Council internally as a way for us to get more members of various departments within the library on board as it pertains to supplier diversity. We had our first meeting in the fall. We had our first meeting of 2021 just last month. And so the Advisory Council really is serving as a place by which we can make sure that our policy and our commitments to supplier diversity are hitting every department within the organization. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but one of the other things that we are working on, even going into quarter two this year, is having every department look at and be able to give some insights into what they are specifically doing to ensure that supplier diversity is a priority for their individual departments. And so we are now beginning to look at utilization numbers by department so that we have some better perspective about where we are. Also, we have continued participating in workshops offered by the city's Office of Minority and Women Business Development. Earlier this year, we partnered on a workshop with the Indianapolis International Airport and several other municipal corporations to be able to talk about what opportunities for small businesses that we have coming up this year. We're going to continue to partner. Our business team at Central Library continues to work with the city and present at those workshops. And we have several more outreach opportunities that we specifically are going to be facilitating coming up later this summer. I mentioned this already briefly, but we are getting more specific into looking at tracking our utilization by departments. One of the things that's really critical to be successful in this work is everybody has to be committed to it. And so in order for us to do that, we have to know where we're starting. And so we looked at our utilization numbers by department for 2020 to kind of see where we were. And we're going to start that as a regular practice in 2021 so that all of those, every department will know where they are and can make some commitments. Our current utilization numbers for this quarter, Garrett actually is going to talk to us a little bit about that based on a new dashboard tool we're utilizing that we want to introduce you to. We started working on this back in 2020, so we want to make sure you have a chance to see that. We also have an element that we're calling Beyond the Numbers that EJ is going to talk to you a little bit about, where essentially we are saying that we are going to be looking at more than just our utilization numbers and looking a little more intently about what we say our values are as an organization and whether or not our vendors are aligning with those values. So EJ will give us a little bit more information about that here shortly. This is just a little bit of a comparison. On the left is what our utilization numbers were at the end of 2019. This information comes from the dashboard that Garrett created that he's going to walk you through here in a minute. And then on the right are our utilization numbers at the very end of 2020. So we had some growth in terms of our XBEs, businesses that we work with. We know we still have quite a ways to go in terms of making sure that we are working toward creating equitable and inclusive opportunities for all of our businesses. But we created this new dashboard so that we can do these kinds of comparisons. And so Garrett will show you how we can even look at a month-to-month comparison from year to year to see where we are working on in terms of our numbers.
Excuse me, Jessica, just a quick one.
Ma'am.
This 2020 utilization number, it's quite a bit. Even during the pandemic, we were able to increase by this much.
So one of the areas that has helped us is the fact that a lot of our construction projects continued. And so that helped. But the other thing, not just the prime contractors, we implemented new processes for looking at our subcontractor monitoring. We didn't have that previously. So now when we do our reports, Nate Weber, who works for me and also works with Garrett, does a phenomenal job of, we follow up directly with our subcontractors about their experience, are you getting paid, things like that. So he makes those regular phone calls and sends forms out to get verification from the subs. Then we're able to find out, are they being paid? Have they been paid? How much are they being paid? And then we can add that also and make sure that gets accounted for in our numbers also.
From 9% to 27%. That's a credit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Never happened before. That's wonderful.
So this is a new tool that Garrett, again, from the dashboard created so that we can start to look at trends as we're kind of moving along in this process. And I think this is where, Garrett, I'm going to have you jump in to talk a little bit more about the dashboard and give them a little bit of perspective about how it works. And yes, so then when Garrett finishes, I'll introduce EJ so she can talk to you a little bit about this next process. So Garrett, I'll stop sharing and I'll let you go ahead and jump in.
Okay. All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, are you guys looking at the dashboard hopefully on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully it's not too small. I've blown it up as big as I can to get everything to fit on the screen I'm looking at. So this is our XB dashboard, and as Jessica mentioned, this is something that we've been working on. Wanted to make sure that Jessica and then the organization had our XBE data more readily available at their fingertips, so we could look at a lot of different views dynamically, and we didn't have to keep going back and creating different reports. This allows that dynamic view. So this works a lot. If anyone's familiar with any sort of visualization tool, it works a lot like that. So these areas across the top and the side, so the year, month, XBE type, service provided, over here on the right, vendors, these are all filters or slicers. And so depending on what you select in here, the visualizations update to reflect the combination of selection. So right now I have 2019 selected. And so these are reflecting the 2019 data. And one of the cool things about the dashboards is sort of as an ancillary aspect of it, if you look over here on the right where the vendors are at, if you can see my cursor, it shows us which vendors we used in 2019 just by which ones are highlighted. So not only does it give us a data view, but it also gives us the information for which vendors we're using. So, but if you want to look at, Jessica talked about some of the progress we've been making. So if we want to focus on these two charts right here. So here's, you see in 19, it was 85% non-XBE. In 20, when we update it, it's 65% non-XBE, and so far through 3 months in 21, it's flipped the other way. We're 71% XBE for the first 3 months of 2021. And so if we want to look at the data across all time frames, so we have 19 through 20 data in here, this is where we look how we look across 3 years of data, or 2 years and 3 months of data. And if we want to look at the different services provided, we want to get rid of the non-XBE, because if we scroll down here, we can see that this gives us our expenditures by percentage, our expenditures by dollar amount. Okay. If we want to select and get off the non-XBE off of here, so we're just looking at our XBE expenditures, then we can go down here, we can look, okay, for the companies that we're spending our XBE dollars with, how does that break down? So, 48.5% of our XBE spend across the 3 years is toward construction, and it accounts for $5.7 million. And then if we look over here on the right-hand side, we can see how the different certification levels break down across that time frame that we've selected. Again, I just have all 3 years selected, but we can select just 2020, let's say, and there was no change. So that looks like we didn't have a lot of shifting in our certification. But you see the values here changed because, we had a lot of vendors in 2020 that we used, that we documented. Only a few weren't selected there. The dollar amount changed down here. And as Jessica mentioned, we have our trend chart down here, which again is sensitive to the selections that you put above. So it's meant to provide percentage, dollar amounts, trends, categorization on the fly. So Jessica and the organization can really take a look at our data dynamically and be more informed as far as what we're doing, how well we're doing a month at a time if we wanted to look at just March. So same thing here, you can see how it breaks down for just March, that we had no VBEs in March because that's grayed out, right? We had no other certifications in March of 2020 because it's grayed out. And then this is the breakdown of how we spent our money. We spent $70,000 on a cleaning company for XBEs, and that accounted for 55%. So it's meant to, just as a question, hey, I wonder how much we spent on state certified MBEs in 2020 across the entire year. She can look at that now. Right. Same thing if she wants to look at WBEs. And so it breaks down 2020 WBEs that are state certified. And so she has that data on the fly. So that's the power and the intention behind the dashboard is to help Jessica be able to access the data quickly. So any questions about that? That's just a real quick run through so you can see how we're accessing our data. Any questions about that or how it works or anything like that?
Just briefly, Garrett, is this mandated by the city or is this something that we're doing on our own?
We do this on our own. So okay. The numbers that are reported that we report aggregate numbers essentially to the city, but as far as building a dashboard and having this granularity in our data, that's something that we've taken the initiative to do on our own. So we're more aware.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I'll also say just really quickly, one of the elements of, because we submit our utilization numbers to the city monthly, but that does not include like state numbers or any businesses who are certified through like Mid-States Minority Supplier Development Council. When we submit our numbers to the city, those are only city numbers. So what the dashboard also allows us to do is to look at other certifications beyond just the city so that we actually have a real view about which certified firms we're utilizing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you,
for
Jared.
instance, sorry, I was just going to give an example of that. So here real quickly, we have state certified yes, city certified no, and we can see which vendors we've used across the 3 years that fall into that category, and then the amount of money we've spent with those. So that's the power of the dashboard. So, all right, I will stop sharing. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, board members.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it moving. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, for the next part, I'm gonna have EJ come on. I'm gonna control the screen here just to talk a little bit about some of the other work that we've been doing around supplier diversity, because we don't want this to just be an element of, oh, we're just looking at tracking, reporting, and compliance. It really is about also making sure that we are working with businesses who we hope will align with our values as an organization, because there are some vendors that don't get reported to the city, but we still care whether or not they believe in our stated priority on racial equity, whether they really want to create opportunity for small businesses. And so EJ is going to come on and talk just a little bit about one of the efforts that she just underwent recently, and what we're going to be encouraging other departments to do also. EJ.
Right. So thank you, Jessica. So as Jessica said, this is really about making sure that we're aligning ourselves with vendors that share our stated values. But also in some cases, there's some sectors that we will not be able to meet our goal. So we need to find out what those vendors are doing so that we can have indirect impact as well as direct impact in terms of our racial equity priority. And so we reached out to, so one such sector is our banking industry. You know, there's not a lot of minority owned banks, especially here in Marion County. So we reached out to Chase, who's currently the bank, that our depository bank. And we asked them some questions about related to diversity. So we asked them what their staff diversity was. We asked them questions on supplier diversity, if they would be willing to provide us numbers. We asked them about any efforts that their organization has undertaken to invest in Black and Brown communities. And then we asked them about if there are any efforts that the organization has undertaken with historically marginalized communities. So they were very, we found that they were very willing to have the conversation. They sent us a lot of information. They talked to Jessica and I on the phone. So they gave us their numbers in terms of where their banks are located. We were wanting to make sure that they were located in lower income areas, conveniently located in all areas of Marion County. They gave us information on the fact that they've committed $30 billion to advancing racial equity in the next 5 years. So this is to create economic opportunity, especially in the Black and Hispanic communities. And then they gave us information about their supply diversity efforts, which, you know, they've been doing way before we even started doing our supply diversity efforts. So they have goals that we can, or not goals, they have strategies that we could even learn from. So I think that conversation was valuable in terms of pushing each other and sharing strategies, but also in making sure that we're holding our vendors accountable and allowing them to know what we stand for and what we expect. So we got a lot of information from them. In fact, they have employee programs that maybe we might try to implement. They have a program called Advancing Black Pathways that involves making sure that Black employees are successful in moving through and getting promoted within Chase. They have one called Women on the Move. They have one called Veterans Job Mission. So it was a very, very useful conversation. I was going to try to keep this brief, but I will be willing to answer any questions anyone has about it.
Any questions from our board?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you. This has been a long time coming, and I'm just so happy to get this kind of information now.
Thank you. And thank you to Jessica, who talked about us going beyond the numbers and inspired me to call Chase and ask them these questions.
Yes, I'm talking about the entire report.
Right.
All right, thank you so much, EJ. I wanted to take a minute for you all to just get some perspective about when we start talking about supplier diversity, we're talking about more than just numbers. We're talking about what real economic impact looks like in our community and what that potential is. And so for our next advisory council meeting, we have requested that each member of the council take some time to process through this. And we've given them questions and things like that. And we're gonna dive in a little more deeply at our next meeting. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you again, EJ. Okay, I'm gonna move through this quickly. I was gonna take a lot of time, but I am not, because I wanna be respectful of your time this evening, but I'd be happy to go over some details. And so, yes, when it comes to our game plan for supplier diversity, we're being really intentional on how we think about this. We've established a stated policy around supplier diversity. We did that last year. We're looking at how we can engage leadership and where that accountability needs to look like. We started working on that in Q1 of this year. And we've been diving deeply into our good faith efforts. We're looking at infrastructure. We still have quite a bit of work to do in this area, particularly around IT systems and how we're going to be structuring some of our information to make sure it's readily available and accessible, and make sure our accounting systems are up to par to do what we need them to do. As far as strategic sourcing, we're thinking about where we're identifying businesses. Are we using OMWBD? Are we accessing information through the state? Are we accessing information through Mid-States Minority Supplier Development Council? And then where does the advisory council come in? How do we train them, get them caught up on how to access the information so that we're sharing information and everybody's able to facilitate this work? And so that's one of the things that's going to be coming up a little more specifically here soon. As far as our data, we're already in a process. I think the dashboard has helped us to establish some data baselines. We've been doing quite a bit of the monitoring and the reporting. So we have our, we're treading water there. I'll put it that way. I wouldn't say that we're there, but we're making inroads when it comes to establishing some baseline data so that we know what kind of growth we need to make. As far as organizational behavior, awareness and support, the advisory council really does serve as a critical tool here because every member of the council represents, I think, every department in the organization. And so we were really strategic about who we brought in to be able to really push the envelope when it comes to our supplier diversity efforts. Performance accountability is going to be important, which is why one of the elements we're looking at is looking at by department utilization numbers so that we can be really intentional about making sure that everybody is committed and then making sure that those staff members also have training so they understand moving this work forward. And then lastly, what do our results look like? You know, and once we evaluate where we are in terms of our results and kind of progress, if we find that it's not working or something's not working, that means we're going to go back. We're going to look at it. We're going to evaluate it. It's not working. We're going to go back and restructure, and we're going to make changes based on what we learn. We have a lot to learn about mentorship and business development. We're pretty new in terms of thinking about how we can do that for businesses. Again, the business team at Central Library has done a phenomenal job when it comes to offering insights to businesses, but we have a lot of growth and opportunity there. But then goal achievement and increasing our spend. We want to make sure that our public dollars are going to support the local economy for minority, women, veteran, and disabled-owned businesses. And that is going to require some intentionality. But once we start to do that, what do the success stories look like? And so we have to work on how we tell that story, about what our efforts are, what we're committed to. And so as we move along, those are going to be some of our priorities as well. Any questions before I move on? And I'll go through this next portion pretty quickly.
The mentoring and the support for mentoring.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't have to talk about it now because you're trying to pump on through, but I'd like to find out more about what ways you're thinking about mentoring and business development. Not now,
Yes.
but
Okay.
as a follow-up.
Okay.
As well as the accountability for that, the performance accountability for organizational behavior.
Okay.
Lots of times we say we're going to hold accountability measures, but how does that actually look?
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm making a note. All right. Thank you, Dr. Murtada. Quick overview. You all have heard about GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. The City Council has adopted GARE as the strategic framework that we're going to be utilizing to really push for race and social equity within organizations. The library, we're a part of the leadership team, and we've been involved in some of the work that is happening around that effort. For the first time last year, you all saw the budget presentation, Budgeting for Equity. I expect that that's going to be a regular occurrence with updates on a consistent basis. So I just provided this so that you all had an idea of the types of things that we've been involved with with GARE. And this is just a model of the GARE theory for change for those who haven't seen it. They talk about normalizing, organizing, and operationalizing. We're in the normalizing stage, particularly when it comes to conversations around race explicitly, being able to talk about that. And then being mindful of, again, as we kind of stated in our strategic planning process, what those intersectional identities look like and how that might influence an individual's experience, whether they're a patron or a staff member. And so we have a lot of work to do in this area, but we are utilizing this framework. And I expect by Q3, we're going to be diving in a lot more deeply with the council committee. In March of 2021, we had the opening retreat for our Equity Council. I think it was on Monday, March the 22nd. The feedback so far has been really positive. It was a half-day retreat. We started at 10 o'clock in the morning and went to about 2:30. Our Equity Council is divided into 3 subcommittees. One subcommittee is focusing on programs, community engagement, and services. We have a second subcommittee that is focusing on mentorship, sponsorship, training and development. And then we have a third subcommittee that is focusing on hiring and recruitment. But I also like to say retention first, because we got to create an environment and a culture where people want to work, and then we can bring them in. And so we have a third committee that is focused in that area. For this year, we're going into 2021. We're still in a global pandemic. But so I am really mindful of individual capacity. And so I have asked each committee to identify one goal that they would like to accomplish this year and then commit to that goal. I am really grateful and appreciative of all the feedback that we've been getting from our council members who are sharing from their experiences, things they're learning. And so that's been really great. But we are going to commit to one solid goal for each committee. And if other opportunities present themselves and there are council members who want to be involved, then they are more than welcome to get connected in that way. But I don't want to overburden anyone. So we're going to be really mindful of that. We're also looking at some intentional community engagement efforts. One of the things that I have requested for the team leads, there are 2 team leads for each subcommittee. I've asked for all of the team leads for every meeting that they have, that there must be a component that invites a community member or community partner or group to the meeting that can talk about that particular area of work. And so each of the subcommittees, when they meet, will be intentional to bring in a local organization or partner that has expertise or experience or feedback, or just to share about the work that they're doing to their subcommittee meetings. I think there's a lot of value there. I think it's important that we're making more connections with the folks who we're working with in the community. We want to know what they're doing. We want them to know what we're doing. And then we want to figure out how we support each other. And so each of the subcommittees is also committed to doing that for this year. The theme for the committee for the retreat was motivated to action. And it was based on an article written by our facilitator for the day. Her name is Dr. Nicole Cook. She does phenomenal work. And it's from an article that I read and shared with the committee members called How to Turn Anti-Racist Knowledge into Action. And it's an article that she wrote, and I shared it with committee members. And so we decided we were going to make the theme motivated to action. So after gaining knowledge, staff are going to racial equity training. We're looking at other opportunities for professional development. How do we move beyond just the talk and going through the training into actually doing something that's going to make a change? Other elements that are happening, I mentioned this already. Yes, we continue to have staff attending racial equity training. We have created a new module that includes a debrief, some webinars and articles, that staff will also be able to participate in. There's a pre-assessment and a post-assessment that did not exist previously. And Stephen Lane, who does a phenomenal job, he's a phenomenal historian here, did put together a webinar that looks at the history specifically of race here in Indianapolis in the public library system. One of the questions that I have often received has been, what does this have to do with libraries? And there are people who have a hard time making the connection between US systemic racism and what we see happening right in our spaces. And so what we wanted to do was to make sure that there were opportunities for information and growth, that we provide resources so that some of this we can help to facilitate for staff, but other work, it honestly is about an individual personal commitment. And so we can help guide the way, and then hope staff will jump in. We had our first training with Hollaback. They've done a ton of work with the American Library Association. Training cannot be everything, but I also believe that it's important that it builds, that there are continuous opportunities for growth and development. And so we had our very first opportunity with Hollaback. They do bystander training on dealing with harassment in the workplace. The first session went really well. We're offering those once a quarter for this year, and those are going to be available. We're also starting a leadership learning series that's going to dive into implicit bias and microaggressions, and that will be for all of our managers and supervisors. We'll start this particular training series in the month of May. So we have kind of commandeered, if you will, some of our managers meetings this year. So it's not going to be a one-day session. It's going to build over a period of time where there will be multiple opportunities for engagement that will do some intentional building. And then at the end, each staff member should be able to have a development plan that they've started to work on for themselves. And then our HR staff person, Tisha, has done a phenomenal job. She and I decided to partner. In January, there was a ALA National Day of Racial Healing. And so we decided to partner. And I said, Tisha, I would love to be able to see some focus on wellness when it comes to dealing with racism. We have to take care of ourselves. Self-care is really critical. She was like, I agree. And so she has been developing a series of wellness opportunities, thinking about mental health and mental wellness that staff will be able to participate in throughout the year that will also count toward their wellness points. And so she's done a really great job of helping to develop that series also. As far as the work ahead, we still have a long way to go. We have a whole lot to do. Community engagement and expanded partnerships is really one of the top elements on my list for this year, things I really want to be able to prioritize. And so we're going to continue to work in that area. We've got to look at some organizational goal setting and priorities, some stated goals around our equity priorities, but they also need to have some data baselines established so that we can say this is where we hope to be. And so I do see a connection between our goal setting priorities and our baselines. We're going to keep looking at opportunities for development and training, and our Equity Council is going to continue with the work that they've been facilitating. The one thing that you don't see here, I'm going to stop screen sharing because I'm finished. The one thing that you don't see here necessarily is kind of what you talked about a little bit earlier, Dr. Murtada, about like looking at organizational culture. That's the work that still has to continue, and we have to think about what that looks like. We can measure it. We know that we can measure it. And organizational climate, we know that we can measure those things. But that's the one thing you did not hear me speak about this evening. We have a lot of more work that we have to do there.
All right, Ms. Moore, thank you so much. That did run a bit longer than I
Sorry
anticipated.
about that.
Well, it's good information. Does the board have, Dr. Payne?
Yes. That's exactly what I'm interested in knowing, because the work is so profound that you are doing. I'm trying to, you mentioned 3 times vendors aligned with our values. And I'm looking at our amazing strategic plan book with our values listed. So my ask is, I guess, Jackie, do you see this? How do you manage culture and climate in terms of making sure that, for instance, the executive committee, all of them are aligned, with the culture and climate that we are seeking, and making sure that the people that they work with have these same values?
Sure. It's a very important question, Dr. Payne. And I would say we're approaching it from a couple of angles. One is the fact that every single person on the executive committee has a role to play in this and has to talk about how it plays out in their area. And so they're all being asked to report, to share, to plan this kind of work with their own people. Most of them serve on the Supplier Diversity Council, that's the advisory council. But we're also doing some things in terms of group reads. The entire executive committee is reading CAST right now, all at the same time. And we have a facilitated discussion coming up on that. And that's an example of trying to make sure that we've all got some common touch points, some common understandings, and a little bit common history lessons. So it's both day-to-day work, but it's also a lot of conversation about the why we're doing all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But this needs much more than we have time for this evening.
All right.
Yes, we're down to 12 minutes. I want to keep on the agenda, folks, if we may, and mindful of everyone's time. Curtis, I assume that's all for your committee, sir? Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right. Next is Facilities Committee, and you are the chairman as well, sir. Chairperson.
I will be reporting to share some of the information.
I'm sorry.
It was Dr. Jett.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
The Facilities Committee received bids that were for lawn care, and we had some concerns. This was back in March the 8th. We had a follow-up meeting, a special meeting, to discuss it because we saw that there was a great deal of difference in the bids that were for lawn care and landscaping. And in that subsequent meeting, we were provided by Sharon and her team with more details, and that was very helpful. And so we made the approval there. We've had a number of other discussions about that were with the architects, with the planning, and shown examples of the plans for Fort Bend, et cetera. And those were all given the approval of the Facilities Committee. Jackie, did that cover some of the things you wanted to point out?
Well, it does. Thank you, Dr. Murtada. And there actually then are 2 further items related. One is an official resolution by the board to ratify that lawn care decision that the committee worked through. So item 17-2021 is a resolution for the board's approval.
Okay, we'll take that out of sequence. That's going to be item 7C. I'm assuming you want that before the board, right? Okay.
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 17-2021?
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Here, approve.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
and Jay Salinas.
Approved. Motion
Thank you.
carries. Jackie, what about resolution 16?
Well,
You've got item 7A also, I believe.
right, we have, our architect is here
Oh, okay.
because there was a follow-up meeting. The committee had a lot of questions about community engagement, and so there was an additional conversation, and I think they want to report to everyone about that community engagement.
Okay.
Mike and Kevin are here.
Okay.
Correct, and we have Russell Lewis with Powers and Sons as well. So, but we wanted to just give you a short presentation about the status of the design for the Glendale branch, the replacement project, and then ask for your approval or authorization for us to go ahead and prepare bidding documents so that we can come back to you later this summer with the result of the bids. That'll keep us on our project schedule. But it's one of the responsibilities the board has is to authorize the preparation of the bidding documents. So I'd like to introduce Kevin Montgomery, our architect, if he's still on our line, and have him share his screen and give a short presentation. And then he'll introduce Russell Lewis with Powers and Sons to just let you know that the project is on budget and on schedule.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Like Mike said, we'll cover a brief summary of community engagement and then where we're at in design development before we move into construction documents if approved. After schematic design, so before schematic design, of course, we had community engagement last fall. We worked through schematic design the early part of this year, and last month went back out to the community and held a Zoom input session that had 50 community members attend. We broke down into groups of about 10 that had someone from the design team as well as library staff, and worked through kind of every individual, just open conversation after sharing the design with them. We also had a survey open that provided that same design information, which had the renderings of the project and a floor plan and simple site plan, and then asked them for their comments. And we had about, we had almost 1,000 people view the images on the survey, and half of those, or 423, that then took the time after the images to respond with comments. I would say overwhelmingly, in general, the project is really well supported. The direction everyone's excited about. We got into mostly specifics with some of the comments and talking a lot about some of the site because it is right there in that neighborhood. There were a lot of discussion around how to use the site as possible. So the outdoor seating area come off the bike trail that's on the other side of 62nd Street with more amenities, maybe provide interactive elements for different age groups outside. There was some focus on sustainability, stormwater management, the old growth large trees that are on site, the conservation efforts that I think we're doing a pretty good job. We're only going to lose one tree, one heritage tree with the project. And then talked a lot about art in or a display space for artists within the building, and also reusing some of the stained glass elements that are in the existing building now, which is part of the plan. For an update on the design itself, you'll have seen a site plan similar to this, so it should be pretty brief. Computers struggling with some of the size of these in Zoom, I think. Is that image up on your end? Not all the way, I don't think.
Yep, it's coming.
It's coming. Tried to close everything else. Well, the main really only revision was just making the book drop area and turning radiuses work a little bit smoother for a safer access into the building and getting the ADA parking closer to the building. In general, the site plan still reuses as much of the foundation of the front portion of the John Strange school that you guys purchased only the front half of the property. So we reuse that portion. I don't know why that's not loading. Hopefully we don't have that problem moving forward here. Just ran through it. There we go. Okay. So this probably again looks a little bit familiar. There were updates and revisions as we went through design development with your feedback and comments. The project is largely masonry. It will be a stone-like, small-scale, blonde, light-colored material for the general field masonry. And then it transitions on the upper portion to a smaller scale. It gives a kind of a break in the massing. You're seeing kind of the front entrance view as you pull in the main drive off of 62nd Street. There's a glass treatment. It kind of filters some of the light and really connects into that site. So we've zoomed in just past all the old growth trees, but the project is kind of heavily vegetated. And we're carrying that theme kind of up against the building and then pulling those warm tones and materials into the building. There's also the large canopy that we talked about last time and creating that front porch setting.
Pictures.
Yeah, they're compressed, but this is one view that we didn't have developed last time. I wanted to share today. This is the internal or enclosed courtyard space. So at this branch, you'll be able to bring material and have events that you come through the library and then go back outside on the west side of the building. There's kind of a nice lawn space out to the west of this even. So it'll be a nice outdoor space that has kind of a mix of seating. It's not real large, but you could hold small groups of 10 to 15 people, and the rest of the time would just be open to general use. It's also has views into this courtyard from the adult, children's, and teen. So it kind of becomes a nice, engaged, active space that patrons see one another without disturbing yourselves.
Is that enclosed?
So it's the building encloses it on 3 sides, and I have a floor plan here in a sec. And then the fourth side is this screen wall.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
But yeah, all open air. I don't know why it's doing this. Maybe if I turn my video off, it'll probably be. It'll keep loading, but again, just refinement of the floor plan in general. The layout is similar to what you saw before with the main adult collection here on the south. This is that courtyard space that we just mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
I really apologize. I've run this file many times before. This block up here is the children's area, and this empty one right now is the large meeting space. I'm not going to wait on this unless someone has questions on the floor plan. Again, it's very similar to what the committee saw, and then, well, it's the exact same as the committee saw and similar to what you saw as a full board last time.
Proceed.
All right, I'm trying.
So
we should see the interior now kind of deeper into the center of the space. Last time we shared more of the entrance view. So this one we've moved further down the circulation spine. So this is your reference desk. Your circulation desk occurs more at the front entrance, of course. And then just to the right of the reference desk, you see the entrance into the children's area. and to the right of that will be the entrance into the large meeting room. And then all the way to the left, you'll see out that west wall into that courtyard space. There will be kind of shared access for all patrons. We just are getting into the selection of some of the interior finishes, but you're seeing those warmer tones. And here in the middle of the building, using a lot of light colors and reflective surfaces to make sure it stays really bright and airy. And then we have more pops of color and interesting flooring as we move kind of further along the edges around the seating areas and up against the windows. It will act really nice to soften the space and bring the scale down. If we just have one last one in the children's, if it loads. I think this is probably a new image to the board, and this is kind of the play area, interactive zone of that children's space. It does have kind of an outer space theme that we're working with. So there'll be educational pieces that are built in and kind of some of the learning manipulatives along this wall. And then this is our window that looks out into that courtyard space.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let Russell with Powers just check in on the budget.
All right. Excuse me. Thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon to the board. We've been working closely with the design team through the project process and updating our budgets as we move forward. We just completed our design development estimate based on the designs that Kevin has presented, and we are tracking on target with the allocated budget, within a reasonable margin of error. One of the things we are going to do during the CD process is to identify some alternative bid items as a hedge against unknown market factors. So just give us some tools to work with through our bidding process. Along those lines as well, we anticipate issuing a early bid package for structural steel. There are extremely long lead times right now for structural steel, and we do not want that to negatively impact the project timeline, which would in turn add dollars. So that's something we're looking at and working with the design team as well. But in general, we're tracking on the published project schedule and on budget.
Thank you. That completes our presentation tonight.
On budget. We love hearing that.
Right. And certainly the work as the construction manager, as constructor that Powers and Sons has been doing for us down at the West Perry branch was a significant part of the increase in our XBE participation in contracted dollars both this year and the end of last year. So they were very successful in reaching out and exceeding our goals. And we expect them to do that again on this project. So we do have one action item for the board, that resolution 16, which is a formal thing for the board to authorize the preparation of the bidding documents. And then Powers and Sons will come back to you to report the results of those bids. It'll now be in 2 separate steps, with the structural steel early and then of the rest of it coming in later. And they will use those bids in the preparation of their guaranteed maximum price.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Is there a motion to approve resolution 16-2021?
I move. So move.
There's a second. Is there any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, can we have call roll, Angie?
Yes, Mr. Bigsby.
Approved.
Dr. Matata.
Approved.
Ms. Payne.
Ms. Payne.
Approved.
Thank you. Reverend Robinson.
Approved.
And Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank
Motion-
you.
Motion carries. Okay, and we've done 17 already, so Dr. Mutata, is that all for the Facilities Committee?
Yes, that's it. I was just pitch hitting.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item number 8, the Library Foundation. Reverend Robinson.
Thank you, Judge Salinas. Every month, the Library Foundation provides an update to the library board. The foundation thanks the Indy Library Store for their nimbleness and adaptability. In March, the store held its second in-person sale during the pandemic. The staff adapted procedures based on what they learned from the first in-person sale and saw great results. Even more innovations are on the horizon. We applaud the Indy Library Store for maintaining a strong presence in light of a challenging environment. We're excited to see that the 2021 CEO Love Your Library Tour for this year, we're encouraging our directors, foundation directors to attend their Adopt a Branch library stop. We are in the final push for completing our fundraising goals for the summer reading program. If you're interested in supporting this effort or know of someone who might be, please contact the Library Foundation President, Roberta Jaggers, at rjaggers@indyplfoundation.org. The foundation thanks 184 donors who made gifts last month. The following are top corporate and foundation contributors. If you should have an opportunity to thank these donors, we would be grateful. Ascension St. Vincent, Blue and Company, Cathedral Women of Christ Church, CD-Com Systems Midwest, Central Indiana Community Foundation, Eli Lilly and Company Foundation, Indiana Education Savings Authority, Indiana University School of Medicine, Indy 11, KRM, who just presented, Architects, and Lilly Endowment. Microsoft, Nina Mason Pulliam Charitable Trust, Office of the Lawrence Township Trustee Steve Talley, Signcraft Industries, Stiefel Nicholas and Company, Sagamore Schools, and Wallington Asset Management. This month, the Library Foundation is proud to provide over $240,000 for library programs and initiatives. Examples of major initiatives support include On the Road to Reading, McFadden Digital Encyclopedia of Indianapolis, Center for Black Literature and Culture, and the concert series. Judge Salinas, that ends my report for this evening.
Do we have any questions from the board on the presentation from the Library Foundation update? Seeing none, we'll move to the chief, the CEO's report. Jackie, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have an item of routine business this evening. This is Resolution 18-2021, our resolution regarding finances, personnel, and travel. And in light of all of the discussion earlier this evening about promotion opportunities, I do want to call your attention to a couple of real quick things. You'll see under internal changes that Olanike Olaini, who was one of our diversity fellows, has been promoted to be our collection development librarian for diversity. And so this is very exciting that someone who was a diversity fellow is now going to be in a permanent staff position. And Janira Newell, who is the Circ Super up at Lawrence, is being promoted to become the circulation supervisor at Fort Bend when that opens. And many of you may know Vanessa Jamerson, who has been the supervising librarian at Glendale. She is the new manager of the Warren Branch Library, and we're very excited about Vanessa having that opportunity. Other changes in here, you'll see that Mike Williams is moving from Central Library to the Communications Department. And let's see, I think the rest of this is probably pretty routine. So I would ask your approval of Resolution 18-2021.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 18-2021 from the board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call of roll, please?
Mr. Bixby.
Approved.
Dr. Murtada.
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Item 9B, Jackie.
Thank you very much. I know we've run a little long this evening, but I was so hoping to get all these things in. We are making some significant new progress in our collaboration with Marion County Schools. And so I wanted to make sure that you were aware of this because it's really quite exciting. I've asked Deb Lambert, the Director of Collection Management, and Sarah Batt, who's the manager of the shared system, to run through a quick presentation for you this evening. And they also have with them a guest librarian from Arsenal Tech High School. So Deb and Sarah, can you take it over?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking a moment to listen. We'll try to be quick since we know this is running long. Joe, would you bring up the slide presentation? Do you have it with you? If not, I'll bring up my copy of it.
I think if you can share yours, that might be easier because
Okay.
I've got the board packet up, but there we go.
Okay, can I put this in slideshow mode when I do this? I'm not sure. I don't see my controls there. So please forgive me. I don't know how to put it in slideshow. So I think this will be good. So Access 360 is something that we've been working with for a couple of years, 5 years or so, to bring more ebooks to our children and teens in a safe platform. But additionally, we have something called Community Share, which, oh gosh, is a partnership. It allows us to partner with schools throughout Indianapolis to share ebooks. So we've got partners from various school districts, as well as individual schools. And Sarah's going to talk more about the school partnership in the second half. But I wanted to talk about the fact that IndyPL has its ebooks on this platform for children and teens. It's both ebooks and e-audios, and it has a website and an app. And we started working with our public on this in fall of 2019. To the right, you can see a snapshot of the app and what that looks like for when kids are browsing materials. We hope that this would be modeled after our sharing program with the shared system of physical book sharing. So we've been working with a partner, Baker and Taylor, to develop this platform. Here's another screenshot that shows books on the website, what that looks like. It's a little clearer. And the concept of sharing ebooks is not quite as straightforward as sharing physical books because of licensing issues. And I've added a little bit more graphic to this slide. I was playing around with that, thinking that Joe would have his, but I'll explain what this is. There's 3 categories of levels, and the IndyPL public collection has, as you can see, about 52,000 ebooks and audiobooks in our section of it. And then the schools down at the bottom have their individual collections at their own schools, and they have their own platforms and their own websites associated with that. With this community share program, we can connect the two, the IndyPL collection and the school collections in what we call the community share pool in the middle. Because of publisher licensing requirements, schools can only access materials in the lower 2 levels. And the public library patrons can access only the things at the upper level. So you can see that we're the big lender in this, but we have schools that are sharing their materials as well. And so it's an exciting prospect that schools can share ebooks with each other, so that if they have a class that is studying Catcher in the Rye or The Color Purple, they get a classroom license for the year and they're done with it. One school is done with it in the first semester. Another school can borrow those in the second semester, and there's cost sharing model in that. So for those people who are more visual, this is another diagram of what the shared system, the community share looks like. As you can see, the IndyPL has a big pool at the top, the arrows pointing down. No arrows pointing up because we cannot borrow from anything that's below. But there's a lot of sharing going down below. and just to show you the interaction and availability of materials between libraries, between schools. I didn't include that in your slide. I thought of it in your packet, so this is new to you. If you'd like a copy of it, I'd be happy to share it with you. Here's another screenshot of the Access 360. And then the reason, this is big news for us right now is because you're all probably familiar with our Overdrive ebook platform, which is what a lot of our patrons are familiar with. Also, the app is called Libby. Our children's materials used to be on that app in that program, but we've shifted, I would say, 90% of the ebooks over to Access 360. We are keeping a small, popular crossover interest collection. So there are a lot of adults that want to read the Hunger Games and The Hate You Give, which are teen titles. So we want to make sure they're available for our adults as well, where they would naturally find it in Libby or Overdrive. Of course, they can always download the Access 360 app and access it there as well. It's not limited to children's and teens. So this is a very significant switch, and with the help of communications, we did a lot of outreach in communication with our patrons, and we also have spent the last few years, building the collection and working with the vendor to fix some of the bugs and make it a solid platform for us to use. So now we're ready to make the switch, and the reasons why we want to have a separate from Overdrive is that it gives us an age-appropriate, safe space for kids to access our children's and teen books without seeing all the adult materials that is not necessarily appropriate to them. The recent law in Indiana that they were trying to pass through the Senate was SB 288, which meant the title was Material Harmful to Minors. And there was a concern that public libraries with school library relationships were providing materials to school students that was inappropriate for them. So this is one of the things that we've developed to help guard against that problem. And so that kind of reaffirmed our reason for doing this. The other reason is that we wanted to establish a common platform for all school libraries. Ebooks and setting up a platform is not an easy task, and many school libraries have attempted to do it, and they've got a small collection here, a small collection there that never really launched because it just wasn't robust enough. And so the schools have tried different things, but we found that if they have this shared platform, then they can share with other schools, and teachers that go from school to school or students that go from school to school have a common experience with this platform and application for accessing ebooks throughout Marion County. And then the third reason is that we wanted to grow that ability for the schools to access ebooks, to have a bigger collection. With Overdrive, we didn't have that opportunity for sharing between the branches, the schools. And I know that they're developing an app that seems similar to what we're doing, but it doesn't give us everything that we need and that we've been working towards for several years. So it's just, this is a quick slide for you to look at later. It's pretty easy to use. It adds pretty much one more step to what you have to do with Overdrive, and that is to choose your school or the public library. When you download the app, you have to choose which school you're associated with. And then you can also add the public library's collection to it as well. And so that's kind of an overview of what we've been doing with Access 360 and Community Share and why we've been doing it. I'm going to hand it over to Sarah so she can talk about it from the school's perspective.
Good evening. I'm going to see if I can talk any faster than Deb Lambert did. I'm not sure if I can. We started this about 4 years ago with members from the shared system, and one member that wasn't in the shared system, that was Warren Central High School. We owe a great debt of gratitude to Dr. Sean Smith and Lawrence Township for his support of this effort. Lawrence Township really supported us and shared a lot of their ebooks with us. So that was really great to have. One of the questions that we get asked a lot is why Access 360 instead of some of the other ebook platforms that are available at schools. And I'm just going to go real quick through the three that you might have heard of. One is Mayan, which offers multiple copies of single titles. Those are usually books that are more instructional in feel. They're not the high interest books that are the kind that the public library is sharing. Epic is another ebook platform that's used in schools, especially during e-learning. Unfortunately, families have to pay to access Epic after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, we're available 24/7. Sora is the app that Overdrive is providing to schools, and it allows teachers to see what students have checked out, which would not support their privacy. And it also allows teachers to confine students to particular reading levels. That is, they could not check out a book unless it was within the range established by the teacher. And that didn't seem fair to us either. Can you go down to the next slide? There we go. This is just a quick look at the comparison of the use. There are 3 IndyPL sites. There's a kids site that just has kids books, teen site just has teen books, and then there's a combined kids and teens site that was requested mostly by IndyPL librarians, because those of us who like to read kids and teens books like to be able to find them all in one place, but it gets a lot of use. But as you can see, there is also, there is an awful lot of use happening right now through the schools. I think that the numbers add up to about 60% of the circulation is coming through the schools. I don't want to talk anymore. I want to let Charles Swink take over for me. Charles is the librarian at Arsenal Tech High School. And he and I have worked together for, I don't even want to think about how many years, but I asked him to come and talk with you about Access 360 at Tech. Charles?
Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Swink. I am the librarian from Arsenal Tech High School. I have known Ms. Batt now since 2015, 2016. Our relationship started right around the conversation I heard you guys have today. The conversation I heard today was about everyone being equal, having equality. As a librarian, before I went to Arsenal, I went to Arlington High School, I was a librarian at Shortridge and then at School 26. At School 26, I got my mind set on building a library that was very equitable to everyone, because that library at School 26 was the Paul Dunbar Library. It was the very first library for African Americans in Indianapolis. And no one in the school knew that. No one in the neighborhood knew that. And outside of my library was Paul Dunbar sign that said in that for the library. And the kids understand it used to be a real library because that was the only one African Americans could go to. And as that school closed and IPS switched, we went to Shortridge. And then we moved once again to Arlington. In Arlington, our kids were some of the poorest kids you might find in Indianapolis. But just because they're poor doesn't mean they don't like to read. Doesn't mean they don't like to excel. And as I looked at my library there at Arlington, I said, I need more resources. And I saw this thing online and I saw the program, and Ms. Batt was on. I didn't know her then at all. And so I went to this program and I kind of heard what they were going to do. And they were starting this e-book program where all these libraries are going to come together and put books in, and they're all going to have this opportunity and chance. And I'm sitting in the back like, okay, Cathedral is down the street to the left. I could walk from Arlington Cathedral. So I told myself, why is it so that those kids on the hill can have books that the kids at the bottom of the hill couldn't have? And so I went straight to Ms. Batt and I asked her right there. I didn't know her. I introduced myself. Ms. Batt, how you doing? And she's like, who are you? And then Ms. Batt started telling me about this. And she said, you know what, Charles, we can talk about it more. And then she allowed Arlington High School and our library allowed us into the program. And the one great thing is, we started out, the Access 360 was just a pilot program at the time. It was all of the schools at the very beginning, the little bitty Arlington in the corner, we were one of the pilot schools within that. And the kids there thrived in it, they loved it. And then of course, things happened at IPS and schools changed and they moved. And then now I'm here where I'm at right now at Arsenal Tech. At Arsenal Tech, as a librarian for Arlington, I told all the kids at Arsenal Tech, the kids there didn't know what an ebook mainly was. They said, well, I knew about it, they didn't know about Access 360. And so then I told them about what I was doing at Arlington. I said, ask Miss Beck, can I please bring that to Arsenal Tech? She said, Ms. Swing, you just have to pause, take a break. I'm going to get there over a matter of time. And then I tried to be as patient as possible. And then I kind of, was patient. But over a matter of time, it worked out. And it was a blessing because not only were we able to utilize Access 360 for our students, but Cordelia, she probably is going to kill me for this because we have 2,000 plus students at Arsenal Tech. And I noticed one thing, majority of our kids said they had library cards, but in reality, they did not. And so they didn't understand that connects with library cards and what it was. And then I show kids this all the time. This is what I love showing kids. If you ever want to see a kid smile on their face, and they say, I can get a library card, they get one of these, and they say, I can't get one. Then all of a sudden, I make them one, and I make them one. And the kids, they go wild over it. And then all of a sudden, they see it now. But not only now do we not have the opportunity of having Access 360, because now we're a part of shared branch, but our friend COVID-19 pops in. Last year, March the 12th, I had 2,000 of these to pass out. We had it planned out to the T. Then our friend COVID-19 popped in and then schools closed down March 12th. We went back up until this past year. But see, right now, I tell everybody, you may say, well, Swing, your process is going slow. But you know what? It's kind of like this. This is what you call a piece, a puzzle piece. And what I look at, I see our program as a puzzle. But only main thing is our puzzle isn't a small puzzle. As you can see, it's a 4,000 piece. But the main thing is when those puzzle pieces come together, what are you going to see? You're going to see something beautiful and immaculate here. These pieces are going to turn into that. That's what our students have done and what that's what the library has done for our kids. And the main thing is, this is the issue we're dealing with now at Arsenal Tech. When I switched over and I weeded, this book right here, I thought it looks like a nice book, right? Yeah, very nice book that was made in 1952. Still on the shelf. This book right here is from the Civil War. It was made in 1946. I think it probably got some personal experiences from the Civil War still in this book. And the main thing now is for our kids, not only to have the opportunity to have the ebooks, but to have up-to-date books. But the good thing is, it's just not, we're just utilizing IPS resources, no, IPL resources, no. I write grants yearly to the Library Foundation, and then we get grants for our budget. Our budget goes into buying those books into our library, which basically is a part of the shared branch now. So we get our books for the shared branch and the ebooks in it as well. And one good thing that we did last year, it was 7 schools in the shared branch. We all came together. We worked this big grant when they was giving out the money for the share for the COVID-19. And we bought these ebooks that's going to spread out through all the high schools within the shared branch. And now we add those extra into the pool. It wasn't about one school getting over the other. It was about Cathedral. It was about Cathedral. It was about Lawrence. It was about all those schools coming together and the resources into one to make students aware, make students understand how wonderful and how useful the Access 360 is. I'm sorry I was talking fast, but I know I'm trying to get through as fast as possible. And I want to thank everyone. Ms. Niles, I want to thank everyone. Ms. Pat, I want to thank everyone for everything you've done for us and for Arsenal Tech. I also want to thank Mr. Franklin, our principal, because without him, we would not be able to do this because he is a reading principal. And I love to have a reading principal, someone who understands the power of reading. And without reading, we go nowhere. Thank you.
Mr. Swing, I can now understand why I have heard so much about you. I will be over to visit your library. Thank you for that amazing presentation.
No problem, no problem. Thank y'all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Jackie, do we have more?
Right.
Or
Okay, Judge, we have one more thing, and it's just we've got to get you all briefed on our next COVID steps. And so I know you have a handout, but John needs to highlight a couple of things so we are prepared for the next month or two.
And I'll be as concise as possible. I know I'm the last report between you all and adjournment, so I'll just be real quick. And the good news is we have this on the agenda for next month as well. So if you need to have a a detailed Q&A, we can do that next month too. So real quickly, we're starting to plan our next steps in our COVID response, which is as we watch the positive COVID trends continue to improve, we're going to be increasing these services that are available to our patrons. So in May, we're going to be taking steps to increase our door count from 37% to 50%, which is what the public health order allows us to do. In June, we plan to restore evening service to Mondays and Tuesdays. And then in September, we plan to restore Sunday service. And those evenings and those Sundays are going to look just a little bit different than our services pre-COVID. So that's something we're going to ask for your approval on next month. And that's the long and short of it. I want to keep it real concise, and I want to just answer any questions that you all have.
Does the board have any questions?
We'll wait till next month.
Question. On that report there, John, you show around 30%, capacity. How has it looked overall with those door counts? And have you made it to the 37% threshold at any of the branches?
Previous to the holidays, we were hitting that 37% capacity with some regularity. But once we entered that fourth wave and we went back to curbside computers, and then we reopened, we have not been hitting that capacity as much. In some of our smaller branches, like East Washington and Garfield Park, for example, our door count limit is 10 people. So we've been hitting it there in some places, but in our larger branches, no, we have not been hitting that 37% to date. Although we anticipate, in the wintertime is our slow season anyway. So as the spring continues to progress and it starts to get warmer and people come out more, we anticipate that traffic to increase.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions from the board? Jackie, anything else as far as your presentation?
There is a handout in your packets that gives all of the dates for the CEO tour, the dates and the times when I will be at each of the branches. If you happen to be in the neighborhood and want to stop by and chat with patrons with me, I'd love to have you, but I'm just making the rounds of every single branch in the month of May to talk to patrons.
All right,
That's all I have, Judge.
Thank you. My apologies to the board. I didn't do a good job of keeping us on schedule tonight.
Yeah, good information.
We did get that, yes. All right, our next board meeting is May 24th. For now, is set for 6:30. Now that's going to be changed. That it's going to be no more Zoom. We're going to be at the. Unless we get some change between now and then, I'm going to send an email out to the board regarding the new law that came into effect that allows for quasi Zoom capabilities. But we need to have policy in place, and I'm going to hopefully get, not me, but we have a committee on policies. Hopefully they can work on that. But at least for the next one, it needs to be in person at the Library Service Center. Is there any additional business from any of the board members? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, folks. You all be safe now.